Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Sub Club Live. So we do these pretty much every Thursday. We've been doing the podcast for 6+ years now, and I hear from so many of you like the podcast is great, but I end up in my car, on a walk, shouting into the void. What about this? What about that? And so the goal of this is to bring experts on weekly to allow you to ask questions. So it's kind of an extension of the podcast. And we have a really fun one coming up July 30th. The 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a podcast guest on. So it'll be Yulia Linux. Her podcast will be released next Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that podcast drop. And then when you listen, take notes or like make a mental note of things you would want to ask based on the conversation we had, because Yulia will be on July 30th to take questions from the podcast, and we'll have some other topics. Pretty much every podcast, I do a whole list of things we should talk about, and then we only get through like a quarter or half. So this is also going to give us a chance to talk about the things we didn't get to in the podcast. So keep an eye out for that and put that in your calendar for July 30th, or subscribe to our calendar. That'll tell you what's upcoming. Next week, we have Ethan Garr. He and I have both been doing a bunch of vibe coding, and neither of our apps have, taken off, made a ton of money. But I think you can learn a lot from what we did right and what we did wrong. And so we're going to be talking about how to effectively and intelligently build apps with AI. There's a lot of product decisions and things like that AI is just not great at yet. And so we're going to be talking through that. So how to effectively use AI, how to kind of work around some of the limitations, how to build a great app if you're vibe coding or using AI assisted development techniques. So today we have a long awaited guest on. I'm super excited to have Lucas Moscon from Appstack. Appstack has been one of the hottest topics in our discussion. When Thomas was on, everybody kept asking about it. When Marcus Burke was on, everybody kept asking about it. So I was like, I just got to get Marcus on so he can talk to us. We're not just going to talk about Appstack today, but he built Appstack because he's an expert in the space and understanding ads and attribution and stuff. So we're going to talk about that expertise mostly, and then we will talk a little bit about Appstack as well. So without further ado, let me bring him onto stage. And Lucas, why don't you give us a quick intro? I kind of did a little bit, but you can give us a little more of an intro.
Well, first, thanks for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to be here for a long time, so happy that today it's the day. Yeah, quick intro on my side. I think I've been working with apps for the past, I would say, 6 years now. I started just because I saw the App Store in an iPod like long time ago, and I was like, this seems to be pretty cool. And yeah, I started on the growth side, running UA and campaigns for multiple applications, and I ended up building Appstack initially for some things that I used to have, and now more than, I would say, more than 200, 300 companies are relying on this infrastructure to run their paid acquisition. Yeah, I became obsessed with measurement and attribution. I don't know why. I think they're really boring
I
topics.
know why. They're boring, but it's like so incredibly important. I mean,
I
like
think it's like it's just
how you make money and how you iterate on your ads and how you track all this is really the bread and butter of like success or not being successful with apps with user acquisition campaigns. So I totally understand the obsession. More people should be more obsessed.
like I'll tell you like a quick anecdote. Like this, I think this happened in 2022. There was an event in Barcelona, and I remember like I was new at the time, and I remember like seeing Thomas on stage, and people were asking like these like experts like, what is the most important thing when running ads for an app? And each expert was saying like a lot of like, let's say, BS, just to be nice on stage. And Thomas goes there and says, just make sure that more money is hitting the bank account than what's going out. And I was like, this makes a lot of sense to me. So I think that's like one of the main reasons why I like what we do. I think it's pretty interesting to know how the money is flowing, if you should justify the ad spend or not, and that's what we do for a living. And I like it. It's pretty fun
Yeah.
because I work with a lot of companies. I get access to a lot of apps. Like I'm exposed to more companies than what people expect. So it's like a, let's say like an independent consultant with superpowers.
Nice. Nice. What apps did you work on before? Because you did apps, then you were consulting, and then you started Appstack, right? Any apps you wanted to shout out that you worked on, or any customers that you can say you had while you were consulting?
I mean, I work with a bunch of apps like from public companies in the US, like let's say I advise like Life 360. I work at Monkey Tabs with IAM, motivation, vocabulary, fintech apps. I also consulted Pixart, like the photo and video app. I also work with the Get Your Guide team. I think they're based in Germany. I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah, a lot of companies, I would say.
Yeah. That's quite a list. So I wanted to start off with the hidden costs of web to app. It's something you're pretty vocal on. I think people think I'm biased, and Revenue Cat is generally biased against web because our bread and butter is kind of in-app purchase. And so anytime I talk about it, I feel like some people just write it off. But like, I feel like I've been very consistent from for years about web to app campaigns and the web in general is that, yeah, do it. Like it can be really powerful, but like be smart about it. And so that's what I love about your take on all this is like, it's not don't do web app campaigns. It's like do it for the right reasons. Know what you're getting into, know the trade-offs. So let's dig into those reasons and trade-offs so that people can think more intelligently about how they're executing on the web app campaigns and like when to send to the web, when to send to the app, those kind of things.
So the first question that I will ask an app is like, why would you go? Why would you pursue this way of like acquiring users? Most applications would say, oh, I want to save the fee from Apple or Google, whatever. Honestly, if you're doing less than 1 million a year, I would say it's really hard to justify. I wouldn't say it's like you should not do it. I'm like, I always encourage everyone to test as many things as possible. But I would say it's really, really hard to justify all the effort that goes into building a web acquisition funnel.
Yeah,
It
and then
could
for
be
Google,
like
that would
designing the web
apply for
funnels.
all subscriptions because all subscriptions on Android are 15%. And then what you were talking about there is under 1 million. I mean, most people know this, but under 1 million, you qualify for the small business program. It's not automatic; you do have to apply. But if you're making less than 1 million a year on the App Store, all of your in-app purchase, one-time purchases, consumables, subscriptions, everything is only 15%. And like you're saying, at 15%, it is like really hard to justify sending people to the web, especially if the goal is specifically to save on the fee, because the fee's really pretty reasonable compared to what you get.
Totally agree with that. And that's why I was like, if you're on like under 1 million in that case, I would say it's really hard because you need to first, maybe you will need to hire like a third party software where you are going to host your web funnels. That's an extra cost, an extra tool you need to learn. Then you need to design the flows. Then you need to make sure you hit the right flow. Then you need to have the third party payment provider, the deep linking connection to make sure everything works fine. You need to learn like a new ecosystem of solutions and like processes for you to adapt to that. And at the same time, I would say that you're also impacting the ASO rankings because fewer users are hitting the App Store page. And that's like a big drop for a lot of companies that are just starting out. Uh, People that are, let's say, pro web funnels will tell me that you can reach new segments, new inventories, new type of customers that are like less willing to cancel. That may be true. I don't know. But that's why also like I proposed like what they call these enhanced app campaigns, which we wrote an article with Review Cat a few weeks ago, which is like literally running like the same type of campaigns like web campaigns, but skipping all of these steps. So I would say that, I mean, web to app could be great. If you're big, it's easier to justify. Like I think Nathan built like a great article around it where he says that you can get your money faster. You don't need to rely on SKAdNetwork and ATT. You can deploy onboarding experience even faster, reach new audiences. You can control the monetization even further. And I think those are true. But but you're also like excluding ASO rankings that you're hitting those pretty hard. You will need to deal with global tax compliance issues. You still need to pay fees on top. You need to work with third-party tools. So I would say that just inform yourself before going into this if you're not making a lot of money.
Yeah, I wanted to dig into a couple of those, and I do love the way you framed it. As far as a lot of people don't consider the operational costs, the attention tax, the focus tax that you get when you start splitting these things out, because for every new web funnel you spin up that's different than your app funnel, that's different than your onboarding, you're putting a lot of time into that could be put into, product development, that could be put into honing the app onboarding. Like there's so many, you have to choose on a pretty much daily basis, what is the most important thing and what to focus on. And then that distracts you. And so for a small team, for some small teams are very successful. So, don't get me wrong. I think, you would agree. It's like if there's this, if you add up all the things and it still makes sense, go for it if that's like the lowest hanging fruit. But I think too many people assume it's the lowest hanging fruit. They get distracted, and then the app suffers, the product suffers, because they're having to split their time amongst a bunch of things. But I wanted to dig a little more into the ASO impact of web campaigns. It's something I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. So what do you mean by that?
I mean, you're just sending less traffic to the stores, and therefore more people will be actually installing the application because of this. And if let's assume that one of the variables to rank higher, it's the total amount of installs that you get every day. You are not getting that because everyone is being redirected to a flow, and maybe only the ones that pay will actually install the application. I mean, I don't know how Apple built the algorithm to rank apps. Maybe you know that, but maybe installs.
No, but I don't know the algorithm. Nobody knows the algorithm, but it does seem like download velocity does have a huge impact, and then also star ratings and stuff like that. And so again, every person who doesn't go in your app is one fewer opportunity to get a star rating, get a review, and things like that. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's simple as that, I would say.
Yeah. And then the other thing you were mentioning is the payment processors and fees and stuff like this. Again, I mean, I've tried to hammer the point on live streams and podcast episodes and stuff, but you see online, and so I love clearing up this confusion. You see online 3% payment processing fee if you do it on the web and 30% on Apple. Well, one, for a lot of people, it's actually 15, and on Google it's always 15, not 30. And then secondly, if you're using Paddle or Stripe's new merchant of record, those fees end up, and depending on your price, you get a per transaction fee. There's so many things that get layered on top of that, where you're really ending up more like 8 to 10% is what I hear from people. All in, your fees end up being closer to that. And so people trying to do the math and saying it's 3% are just fooling themselves and haven't done it. And then once they get into it, they're like, oh crap, the math doesn't work out. But then that's the whole point of if you do it, you also just need to be smart, actually A/B tests, send some traffic to the web, send some traffic to the app, see how they perform. And see if you're actually getting the higher conversion, higher retention, and the things that are promised, and then weigh it against the actual cost of doing those things. And then you got to think ahead, if I'm going to experiment with web, how much is that going to cost me in time and attention and everything else? Where else could I put all that? So anyways, I'm getting on a little bit of a soapbox here because I agree with you so much. And I say this, again, people probably think I'm biased, but Revenue Cat, we have a funnels product now, and we've been working on it. We released it in beta in the fall. So it's not like this is some new thing. We have web billing. We're very much as a company. And so my bias isn't against web. We have really great products. And you were saying earlier, the cost of adding on a web funnel. We actually decided to make our web funnels just part of the cost. So you don't even have to pay extra to use web funnels. So I say all this with like, Revenue Cat is all in on helping people do web payments. We just want them to do it effectively. Like our mission is to help developers make more money. And so if web makes you more money, we're building out the tools to help you make more money on the web. If the app makes you more money, we're building the tools to make you more money inside the app. And so anyways, it's just kind of a soapbox. I probably get on too much, but any kind of follow up comments on that?
I mean, what I can say on top of that is that there's another big cost that most people ignore. And I think that it's the knowledge gap for people working in the app space. Most people that I know, they've never been exposed to web. Uh, since they were always used to launch app campaigns, app promotion campaigns, and everything was run through like, say, an MMP tool, whatever. Everything was so streamlined. So whenever you start talking about UTM, basic stuff, because they don't know it just because they never work with it. So you need to train your own workforce to properly
Yeah.
deliver the results that you're aiming for. And that's another cost.
Yeah.
So training your own people.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this earlier, but we love taking questions. So if you have questions related to these specific topics that we're discussing, drop them in the chat. At the end, we will leave like 15, 20 minutes to just have like total open Q&A with Lucas. So yeah, we'd love to have comments, love to have questions. So blow up the chat with some questions, and I'll talk through those as we go if they're relevant to what we're talking about. The last thing I wanted to talk about on this topic, and it actually relates to exactly what you were just saying about learning. I had assumed for a long time that if you did web campaigns, they were more deterministic, or they're like not just more deterministic, but almost completely deterministic, because you can set the UTM parameters, you can get better tracking. And what I've learned through educating myself and talking to people in the industry is that Apple is stripping UTM parameters. There's like IP stuff they're doing if you're in Safari. Like the web can be more deterministic than app and using SKAdNetwork and stuff like that, but it's actually not as deterministic as most people assume. You're not getting 100% visibility on your web campaigns and only 50% on your app campaigns or whatever. Can you speak to that as well?
So that's a big topic.
Yeah. This is your bread and butter, attribution. So yeah, I figured you'd have some great insights here.
So the first thing I need to say is that the only things that are deterministic in 2026 are SKAdNetwork and the entire Android ecosystem. Okay, so the only things where we can actually start to discuss and dig into what's actually going on, it's in everything that it's happening on iOS devices that are not relying on the SKAdNetwork framework for attribution. So this is something people don't understand. SKAdNetwork, it's deterministic, 100% deterministic. Then you will not see a lot of data. That doesn't mean it's probabilistic. It's just that they are hiding it from you because of thresholds. But it's deterministic. So going to the other, let's say, part of the story for iOS. On the web, nothing will be deterministic. Unless you just, let's say you're running a web funnel, then someone puts the email, and then when the user opens the app, then they log in and they use the same email. Then you're matching on that, let's say, first party data in some way. Okay, but let's assume that's not the case for most companies, okay? Because a lot of apps maybe they're not asking for the email address when the user downloads the application. So for these type of campaigns where you're running on the web, and let's say you're redirecting to the app stores, that's relying on probabilistic modeling. This is a standard in the industry. It has been going on for maybe 15 years. I don't know. It's been a long, long time. So this is nothing new. And the way it works, it's kind of complex. I thought it was going to be easier when I started with Appstack, but it's not that straightforward, I would say, for multiple reasons. One reason could be how each region or country and its carriers are managing the IPs, the user agents, the browser experience. how, for example, different ad networks are actually validating the redirections. Like Google has their own certification process. TikTok, it's more like a black box. Meta, it's easier to detect some scrollers. So every channel, every company, it's operating in a different basis. So that's why it's not super straightforward to understand how this works. And I can give you like multiple like real life examples. So for example, we have a customer, like we work with a company and they're like, let's say spending almost $1 million a month. And with the same setup, they're doing money, but other apps with the same setup, maybe they are struggling on TikTok, and other ones are struggling on Meta, and everything it's the same on the infrastructure side. And something changes maybe on the way the network changes manages the redirections, and sometimes like it's hard to explain. So it's not that linear on how attribution works on the web. What I can tell, and this is a fact, it's 100% probabilistic, and the attribution can be, let's say, fine-tuned for the needs of the application. This basically means that if you want 100% attribution rate, you can have it, but it may be misleading because you will be ignoring all the organic. So, and this is something that I also wanted to bring up here, which is the concept of 100% attribution rate. I don't know if you heard this before. Oh, what is your attribution rate? Oh, how accurate the attribution actually is. The truth is that when people ask if the attribution rate is 100%, that's that question is completely wrong. Like that question doesn't make any sense. Okay? For the simple reason that if I ask you what's the right attribution rate, you don't know it. You have no idea. You want to say 100%, but what's the real number behind that? Should we say 100 purchases, 101, 99 purchases? Like, what's the total amount of purchases that are actually equivalent to like 100% attribution rate? And companies that are like having a lot of organic or a decent amount of organic, they have no idea what's the real uplift that they should be measuring. So the trick here is that how you can make up a number that actually makes sense to make sure if more money is hitting the bank account than what's going out, right? Which is what we discussed before. So what do we do, for example? If a company is saying me, hey, Lucas, we want 100% attribution rate, I will tell them, hey, do you have organic data? Yeah, we do. So let's try to avoid this concept of matching everything that we can and try to match what we're pretty sure that we can match. And then we can increase the rate if you need it. So that's how we like fine tune the model, and we run on custom attribution models for each app ID to actually deliver the best experience for your app with the basic logic of, hey, this is the uplift that you are seeing. This is what we validated that you're actually making from this campaign. And this is what we see in the backend. Are we matching pretty accurately? Yes or not? If the answer is yes, then we can keep increasing the matching rate. And this is how we're going to be capturing more signals and passing this back to the ad networks for better attribution and better performance. But it's not that like straightforward. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I mean, and that's the thing is, there's just it does go really deep. I mean, this was just like scratching the surface as a high level overview of like how all that works. But once you dig into the details, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And one of those things is the IP address is heavily relied on, for the probabilistic attribution. What are your thoughts on Apple's stance and like, there's been some, and I've said like I'm surprised Apple hasn't done more, but it kind of makes sense that they don't, because maybe we're at kind of a new normal where the kind of attribution that folks are using the IP address for Apple is comfortable with, because it's not as privacy invasive as what used to happen with the 100% deterministic stuff. But it always is this like kind of threat out there that Apple will continue to, because they've done it with like iCloud Relay and things like that, where they have kind of more and more found ways to obfuscate and make that kind of tracking harder. So any thoughts on like how that's going to play out in the long term and how that will impact things?
So I'm really on Apple's side here, to be honest. Like I think that the initial concept or idea behind the SKAdNetwork program and later the attribution kit, I think it makes sense. Like they wanted to push this privacy policy forward. I'm totally okay with that. I think they could have done it better in terms of the technology that they deploy for their own customers, let's say, because in some way, like their own developers that are pushing apps to the app store, they need to make money and they are willing to spend money on ads. But then they give this tool to them, which they cannot use. So then the question is like, what are these developers are going to actually use to increase the revenue for their apps? So I think they made a huge mistake of not listening to the community and what actually matters for them. I think that the main KPI, which is what I said before, which is make sure more money is hitting the bank account than what's going out, was not addressed at all.
Yeah.
Like with SKAdNetwork, it was literally impossible for consumer apps to actually know that. So then it didn't make any sense at all. Like from the beginning, it was designed to not make any sense. But I think the idea is great. Then regarding the IP, I think it was a trade-off that maybe they accepted. It was like, hey, I will not let you see the IDFA, but if you want to use the IP, maybe it's up to you. Find a way to make it work. Maybe that's what they think. I don't know. What I can tell you is that last year, I met a guy working on the attribution program at Apple, and my personal, let's say, perception of what this guy was saying to me was that they had no clue what they were doing. Like even after like
Yeah.
5 to 7 years of development, it was like, what are you talking about, man? Like this doesn't make any sense for your customers, for the entire community. And I think that's why they didn't ship anything this last WWDC. This doesn't mean maybe they are not working on something new, but it's pretty clear that something is going on their side, and maybe they realize it was really bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is great.
Yeah. I've been a
I don't know if
very
you.
vocal critic of SKAdNetwork over the years, and it is. I think I've even said this in blog posts, and I certainly have in tweets. But it is a very ivory tower design in that they're thinking about it and approaching it from a almost like clean room privacy optimization, like not taking into account the like real world, like how people will actually use it. And instead they're just designing a system that like logically makes sense to them, not how it's like logically actually used in the real world, and what people want. And it has been a huge frustration of mine that the promise of SKAdNetwork was a privacy friendly, deterministic ad tracking, which is, I mean, that's essentially what they promised and what we interpreted it as, and then it just has never been that. And then the progress on it's been slow, as you mentioned. I mean, it's crazy that we didn't hear anything about it at WWEC like all these years in. And that's where kind of back to like, it does feel like maybe they're just accepting that probabilistic attribution has gotten good enough. Like Facebook's matching has gotten really good. The stuff you're working on, Appstack, has gotten really good, and so maybe they're just like okay with that. But yeah, it seems like a huge missed opportunity for them and for the broader community that they don't put more effort into it. So yeah, I agree with everything you said.
And I don't know if you remember, but last year, Apple was being fined by the European Union because Apple Ads was operating under the ad services API, and it was like an unfair like advantage that they had against the other companies running like ad networks. And I remember that the day before the EU was announcing I think it was like a $300 million fine, something like that. And then this one day before the announcement, they release SKAdNetwork on Apple Ads. And let's say that 1 month after that happened, I went to MAU last year and I started talking with some people working at Apple. I was like, hey, are you recommending your customers to use the SKAdNetwork API on Apple Ads? And everyone was looking at me. I was like, is that a thing? Like, that does exist? Actually, like, what are you talking about, man? I was like,
Yeah.
you actually made this announcement like 30 days ago. SKAdNetwork is now available. You can unify all the attribution across Meta, Google, TikTok, Apple ads for the first time. And they were like, we have no clue that was the thing. So even like the own representatives at Apple ads, they were like trying to avoid SKAdNetwork at all costs. And that's like a clear sign that, like, I mean, if you're building a tool and you're not willing to use it, it looks weird, or at least it's not the most logical way to operate, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what
Well,
you think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know.
yeah, no, no. I mean, yeah. I will say I feel like we could spend another half hour just kind of bitching and moaning, as it were, about Apple's problems in this area. But I do want to kind of shift the conversation. I think people are probably to a certain extent tired of hearing about all this. I think it's important context, so I wanted to talk about it. But let's move on and stop complaining about Apple and talk about what people can actually do. I mean, that's what people are really here for. Okay, it is what it is. It's important to understand how it all works and why it all works, and understand the frustrations that we have with Apple. But then, okay, what do we do now? So I don't know. I mean, we have a long list of things to talk about, but what are some of the top things that you are now advising people around ad diversification, around like how to actually run ads and effectively measure and detect ad fatigue and those kind of things? Let's dig into that, and feel free to start dropping questions too. We haven't had a single question. Just start throwing them in there, and I'll either save it till later if I think it's off topic, or I'll throw it in as we're chatting. So start dropping questions.
Great. So I would start with a customer that we have. One time he said to me like the thing that actually so the thing that it was most relevant for him was to make sure that the average revenue per user was something that it was profitable to run ads on. So first, you need to make sure that with the first users that you're getting, you're actually making a profit of them, or like it's good enough to justify the ad spend. So that's one thing. The average revenue per user or per paying user, that's super important metric. Um, and then if I was like building an app today, what I will do is just like I always say that onboarding is the new retention in 2026. I mean, I don't think it's good for long-term thinking, but if you're trying to start something today, if you're vibe coding an application, onboarding is the new retention. Just focus on that. 80 to 90% of the purchases will come through the onboarding process. Then, of course, if your product is terrible, like everyone will cancel. But just focus on the first screens at the beginning. Um, and then in terms of like what I will do to grow this application, I will try to focus on a niche where I know that there are like high paying customers. Like for example, I don't know, like a random idea could be like something related to art. People like with money go to museums or like buy actually expensive art items or whatever. So you can like go into a specific niche, and then what I will do is then I will run on search mainly instead of social. You require less creatives. You're not worrying about creative fatigue. You don't need to be dealing with rejections, content creators, agencies. Like just ignore that if you can. So I will look for a really like profitable niche where the users that I'm trying to acquire, I know they have money, and I will try to go into Google search to app or TikTok search to app or Apple ads. That's what I would do first if I'm broke, okay? And if I'm new to this industry, just a random app related to art collections or like scan like yeah, like paintings, and then go to museum and you can save the paint, whatever. Something super simple. But that's what I will do. And with everything that we're doing with enhanced app campaigns, where you can easily see at the keyword level if you're actually making money or not, I think it's the most efficient way, I would say, and the most like the smartest way to actually move forward. So yeah, onboarding is in your retention. Build something that you know that your customers are willing to put money on, and try to run on search. Those are the three main things I would say.
Yeah, yeah. That I think too many people sleep on that fact that it's going to be really hard to make ads work if your average paid user or your average conversion is low. And you need to take like the full funnel into account, in that if you have a ton of users coming in and you can acquire them more cheaply, your average revenue per user can be lower, and you can still make it work if you just have such high conversion from the ads. But then if you have lower conversions, the lower your conversion rate is, and to your point of onboarding, like that's such a low hanging fruit for folks of improving that. But the lower your conversion is, the higher your average revenue per user. And so for a lot of people, finding ways to bring a lot more value, either in a niche or just better explaining the value prop so people are willing to pay more, experimenting with higher prices, it can help shift the balance. But on the flip side, like one of the companies, I think we've all been most impressed with over the last 3 years was Cal AI. And I was shocked that they were only charging $30 a year for that product. And then they were discounting to like $20 a year, but it's because they were so effective at getting people in the door with UGC, and even their paid ads were way more efficient. And so it's always such a balanced trade-off. But I think that's how you need to be thinking about it. It's like not just average revenue per user, not just conversion rate, but like how that all balances out. Any kind of tips for like how to think about that, how to measure that?
So that's a good question because, for example, yesterday I was talking to a customer and they were like, they were doing pretty good. They were like doing every day around 10K a day in sales. And they wanted to start running on TikTok ads. So everything was almost pretty organic. And basically, in their case, they started running on TikTok ads and they had like cost per action, which was like they were optimizing. I think it was like trial qualified, something like that. And what they were doing, which I think it was a huge mistake, was that they were just focusing on the cost per action. So if the trial qualified was $8 or $10, then this didn't make any sense for them because they wanted to have a cost per action of 6. But then I was like, hey, are you actually seeing the cohorts or not? Are actually these users making you more money on day 10, day 17, 30, whatever? And they were like, I have no idea, man. They told me. I was like, well, let's see if you're actually making money. And they were doing money. They were doing like $300 or $600 per day in profits, okay, for each day that they were advertising. And they didn't know that. And it was because they were like only obsessed on the cost per action. So my approach is just use the CPA as a proxy to operate. Of course, if you were paying a trial $200, it wouldn't make too much sense for you to keep spending the money there. But if you're between a range that you can tolerate, just wait until you see the actual conversions coming in, because maybe you will get a nicer price, which was the case for them. So run ads, wait for the revenue to come in, then make the decision. And that's how I would recommend most people to operate, because it falls under the philosophy of make sure that more money is hitting the bank account than what's going out. So if you can validate that at the campaign level, ad name, like it's great. You can do that. So why not doing it?
Yeah. All right, we've had some great questions come in, so let's just start moving into questions, because I always like to. I mean, the audience, like, they're here for a reason, so let's get to the reasons they're here. First one related to something you said earlier. What did you mean when you said keyword level performance? How is that different from keyword level data from App Store search ads via MMPs? You were talking about like Google search campaigns, right?
Yes, exactly. So I've seen like really great numbers and performance by moving away from traditional, let's call it school app campaigns or universal app campaigns, and just like totally control the search inventory yourself. And you can actually see at the keyword level how many conversions, trials, renewals those keywords are actually getting. And I would say that's like a huge unlock, because first, you're not cannibalizing your own application. You actually know where you're spending your money. You can control the caps. You can choose if it's exact match or not. And you can have like multiple strategies, like against the same as Apple Ads, but for Google. And I think Google has like a broader inventory than Apple Ads. And it's like something that apps are not like actually exploding today. So it seems to be a great opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. Similar or not similar, but like on the kind of big ad network side of things, here's a great question. Hey, Lucas, thoughts on measuring iOS Meta campaigns using SKAdNetwork for installs and Meta AEM, advanced data sharing attribution in the AMMP for revenue? So yeah, what are your thoughts, and how do you advise folks to operate their stack between MMP and AEM and all the things going on these days?
So first, SKAdNetwork. I think everyone knows. I mean, this is like you can read the docs on how this operates in the backend. So you should know all the limitations when it comes to measuring the installs. Although the installs, it's the easiest one to actually measure. The problem comes down when you actually need to justify the ad spend and actually tell your boss if you can keep spending the money here or not. So I wouldn't actually recommend that one. Then for AEM, it's just like it's like source trust me, bro, in some way because you don't know how this works. So if you try to contact someone at Meta and ask them like, hey, can you please explain to me how are you actually coming up with these numbers? They will tell you it's AI or a new model. So they're not like disclosing how the users is actually being matched. And for me, that's a red flag in some way because you don't know. And then for the data sync for the revenue with the MMP, again, I would say it's mostly on Meta side, the ones who are handling that. And then the MMP will consume or not the data. I mean, I'm not an expert on this one for the MMPs. You should ask them. But yeah, I wouldn't like SKAdNetwork. You know what to do. Just be skeptical. And for AEM, it's like if the numbers make sense, great. If not, then you cannot fix it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been hearing from a lot of people that if you're only doing Meta, that their attribution has gotten really good, but it's a black, to your point, it's a black box. So it's like, if the money coming in and going out, yeah, like if you're making more than you're spending, great. If not, it's like really hard to really dig in and troubleshoot and figure it all out. But to their credit, they've been getting way better at the matching and attribution and stuff. So if you're only running Meta and it's working, go for it. And if it's not, that's when you need to really dig in and try and figure out what's going on. All right, another one that just came in. Not sure, but maybe a related question or not. But I have an app with like 22 trials, and 90% did not cancel. But then later I see all of them in a billing error. Am I missing something here? We get this a lot at Revenue Cat because they're like, Revenue Cat's broken. All my trials are going into billing error. What's going on with that?
I mean, for example, we work with a guy that they were using Revenue Cat and they were complaining about the same thing that you just mentioned. And this guy was like, okay, I'm going to use 100% Stripe. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. And then he told me that he had the same issues still with Stripe, uh, and that I don't know why this happened to him, but I would say 98% of the trials were with like prepaid cards. I don't know how you call this in the US, like
Yeah, prepaid cards. Yeah.
prepaid cards. So it was like cards maybe without any funds, or like fake cards in some way, or like one-time purchases that they generate on these apps. And everything was crashing when the billing needed to be like executed. So I would say it's highly related to the quality of the users, honestly.
Which
Uh,
is like the quality of the audience that you're getting. So if you're like getting really cheap traffic, that cheap traffic is probably cheap for a reason, and like that traffic quality is a huge determiner of that, right?
Maybe I'm wrong, but I've never seen a case where like let's say like a healthcare application or like a really luxury application actually deal with this issue. Maybe because people are really willing to pay and they actually needed to pay for that subscription. So it's like I don't know. I don't know the application in this case.
Yeah. And I will say too, I mean, having dug into this for Revenue Cat customers, and we've looked at data internally and shared some stats in the State of Subscription Apps report. It's much worse on Android. So if you're talking about Android, it's a lot of what Lucas was saying, that you have prepaid cards, Google's a lot more flexible, and people don't often have as much tied to their Google Play account as on Apple. Like with Apple, a lot of people are subscribed to iCloud, or they have multiple other subscriptions. It is also just generally a more fluent audience and everything like that. So the billing error rate on Android is like way higher than iOS. And then we also do see certain niches, and I've talked to people who it was very much that combination of, like you said, the app itself was attracting an audience that their credit card was bouncing even if they had a credit card attached, or it was just attracting that like low intent, low quality. But then I've also heard from people who determined at the end, like they just thought it was fraud. So they were whatever app that was their ads were getting shown in, and this is the black box thing. It's like Google will find a traffic for you, and Meta will find traffic for you in different audiences, but especially on Google, people are incentivized to get your ads to be clicked on, and that can end up being just fraudulent, where they have a bot farm, or people tapping on your ad, going and starting the trial, but they don't actually even have, like, they have 2 cents on their prepaid card or whatever. So a combination of fraud, traffic quality, and everything else. But like it's not like a payment processing issue that can be solved on your end. This is the also black box of payments on Apple and Google, and I mean to a certain extent Stripe as well, because you have similar issues on Stripe, like you were saying. You have chargebacks, you have billing issues where they don't convert. And one final tip there is make sure you do have your grace periods set up well. Both Apple and Google have grace periods set up. I think Stripe has something similar as well, that it will keep retrying. And so, but you need to be careful there. And with Google, you can set it to where they don't have access while it's retrying. So like if you're an AI app and you're giving a 3-day free trial, and they're going to burn a bunch of credits, and then they go into a billing error, and then they just keep burning credits. Like, you don't want to give them like a 30-day grace period, but you can actually limit access to the app while it's retrying, but then it can retry for up to 30 days. And then they do see like a really high recovery rate, or not really high, but a higher than you would expect recovery rate on a lot of those, if it's not just total fraud. So a few tips there, but it is just the nature of things. I mean, any business deals with this kind of stuff. Even like e-commerce, people will go to checkout and then it gets declined. I mean, I was just experiencing this with my HSA card. Like, it got declined like 4 times in a row. I had plenty of money. It was a misconfiguration on the pharmacy of what they were charging for, not showing as HSA eligible. So it's like, just stuff happens on billing. So I wouldn't, but it is something you need to like try and root cause. Like, is it fraudulent traffic? Is it low quality traffic? Is it, what combination of those things is it? So anything else on that, Lucas?
No, I nothing else to add on that one. What I can say on top is that for some apps that I work with, like they were getting not the billing issue on day 3, let's say, or day 7, but people were canceling really fast. So they switched to the trial qualified instead of start trial. And that helped them maybe not to solve the issue as a whole, but to actually understand that this was actually impacting their campaigns. And then they can actually see reflected on the ads manager the increase in the cost per action and the lower amount of volume that we were passing back. And one of the numbers that I can share, I mean, I think on your side, David, you also have some numbers here, but based on some studies that I read, around 34% of users on iOS will cancel the trial in the first 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree on that number or you have a different number.
I don't know off the top of my head, but ballpark, that sounds right. Like in the State of Subscription Apps report, I think we showed, especially for 3-day free trials, it was like 60% cancel within that first day. So yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is like people are getting more and more savvy about free trials, that even if they intend to use the app and they're high intent and potentially are going to convert, they'll go ahead and turn off the free trial so it doesn't automatically convert, and then they'll go turn it back on. The one thing we haven't shown a lot of data on, because I don't think we're tracking it in a way we could show this data, although I think maybe recently we started tracking, so maybe next year we can. But we haven't showed data on how many people turn it off in that first day and then turn it back on. The 60% is people who've turned it off and end up churning. So don't turn it back on. So, and then maybe there's 10% that turn it off that first day, but then turn it back on. So, but yeah, the numbers are crazy. Like people are, they're just not very trusting of the free, or they're more trusting of the free trial now, but they're just, taking matters into their own hands by turning it off so that they don't accidentally get charged.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And that's why the cohorts, it's the best thing that apps need to use to actually make decisions. Just the question is, are these users that I acquired today going to make me more money than what I spent on ads? Yes or no? If it's a yes, keep spending. If it's a no, try to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's what. And I agree with, like, on the web ecosystem for e-commerce brands, it's more, I would say it's easier to detect. But for apps, it's quite hard because there are not a lot of solutions that actually, I would put it this way. A lot of the companies that we work with use RevenueCat, most of them. And the fact that they trust RevenueCat's data and that we operate for them with RevenueCat's data makes them trust this a lot, and they can actually debug this in their RevenueCat dashboard. So it's pretty reliable. And honestly, I was talking to another guy the other day. I was angry with myself that we didn't prioritize the cohorts before, let's say June, I think we shipped this. So it was like, that's the only thing I'm using today, just cohorts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about anything else. If it's if it's the worst ad creative that I'm seeing in my life, I don't care. If the cohorts is telling me that I'm making money, I'm going to double down there.
Yeah.
And it's as easy as that, honestly. And if you can, for example, unlock another big, and this is something that I also want people to know, is that if you run on these enhanced app campaigns, you can actually pass all of these user attributes to RevenueCat. I mean, if you're hosting your paywalls on RevenueCat, that's great, because we can send everything to RevenueCat, and then you can create rules. I think it's called rules inside RevenueCat. I don't know. Or targeting.
I forget. We're moving so fast on all this stuff.
There's
like, I think it's targeting rules. Yeah.
Something like that. I don't remember. But you can create like these audiences, let's call them. And then you can apply these audiences from people coming from a specific ad to a specific paywall.
Right.
So you can drive, like, for example, if you can put like what people ask me all the time, can I put like a hard paywall for people coming from Meta? You can.
Yeah.
You want to offer a different, let's say, subscription package to different segment inside the same audience? You can. You want to change the layout for women and men on the paywall depending on which ad they are coming from? You can do it. And I think that's honestly the biggest, like the most important lever that people will have today to actually move the needle to increase the ROAS.
Yeah.
So it's not signal engineering. It's not finding the secret channel. I mean, of course, the ad creative is important, but in-app customization for each individual user, it's crazy. Like, honestly, I was shocked by the results, and I really encourage everyone to do it. Like, put some time into that.
You do have to be careful because Tinder did get in a lawsuit for charging men more than they charge women, I think was the lawsuit, and charging older people more than they charge. But to your point, like, it's not just about charging more money or charging different prices or whatever. It's about customizing the offer. And so if somebody saw an ad, they're All Trails. Like if somebody comes into All Trails and they came in from an ad that was more about hiking, or one that was more about biking, or one that was more about whatever, if you can customize that onboarding and the paywall and everything else to what they really care about, like, you're going to convert better than if you just use the same paywall, the same onboarding for everybody. And so, yeah, super, super powerful technique. And there's ways to do it intelligently that really drives revenue.
Let's say you have like a magazine app, or you're just sharing news. And maybe people like tapping on ads for like real-time news that you are showing on the ad, maybe those guys, they're just clicking because of what's going on at that specific time. And maybe those guys can actually, maybe they will be only interested in like a weekly subscription, you know? But maybe people that are like more educated, and then you want to show him like an ad, hey, you need to be informed on a constant basis, like you need to be reading the news every year. Maybe you can offer them like a different subscription offer, you know? So depending on the ad that it's impacting the audience, you can offer like a different subscription package.
Yeah.
And that could be really beneficial.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, charging sex on different like
Yeah.
subscription. I'm not talking about that one. Just like
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify, if you're going to go that direction, you do have to at least keep some things in mind and be careful. Because, I mean, it's super effective. I mean, that's why Tinder did it. That's why other companies have done it, but it's just illegal in a lot of places. It's just sex-based discrimination. All right, we've got a bunch more questions. So I want to, maybe we should try and make our answers a little quick so we can get through more of them. But I did want to show this one because I loved it. It's not a question, but it's a comment. I'm trusting $1 trillion black box to write my code. I'll trust $1 trillion black box to attribute my ad spend. I thought that was pretty funny. Which it feels like more and more it's true. It's like we're having to trust, Meta on the attribution. We're trusting ChatGPT and Claude helping us write the code itself. It's just a sign of the times that we're relying more and more on these $1 trillion companies to like help make decisions for us, and it's crazy. Any comments before I move on to an actual question?
No, I think it's. I mean, everything comes down to make sure that in your Mercury account or that the proceeds you see in App Store Connect are actually making sense to what this $1 trillion company is saying. But if that makes sense, I will trust it.
Yeah. This is a fun one. You kind of already answered this earlier, talking about all the customers you've worked with, but I like following advice and buying software from people who have built and scaled apps from zero to big revenue. Which apps did you build? And I think, the answer you shared earlier, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk again, was that you've worked with some really big apps. You weren't an employee or a founder, but I will say, as a pushback on this question, a lot of the people I most respect in the industry are consultants. And what's so interesting about consultants, and like what Lucas did for a long time, is that it's not, if you're a builder in a single app that takes off, Ladder is one of my favorite apps right now, so I use them all the time as an example. If you're inside Ladder and you're a marketer inside Ladder, you think you know why it worked, and there are incredibly smart people at Ladder, and they're doing a lot of really smart things. But like all you have is that perspective. And if you took all of the strategies from Ladder and tried to apply them to a different fitness app, it would probably completely fall flat because there's a lot of biases that you don't even realize. The reasons it worked might not be what you hypothesize, and you never really get to test against why it wouldn't work. But when you are consulting across multiple apps, you try those same techniques across 5, 10, 20 different apps, and you see, oh, it works in this situation where like there's a higher priced tier where there's a lot of value and the retention's good, but it doesn't work if it's a lower price and the retention's bad, and then that's why. And like you can kind of pattern match in a way that an individual builder who's only ever worked on a single app can't. So anyways, I just I thought it was a interesting framing, and so I wanted to push back a little bit, but then also again give you a chance to kind of talk about some of the stuff you've worked on.
Sure. So I think that the best thing about like I've been lucky enough with two friends to build apps a few years ago. We had zero money, so we were like growing then. Like one of those, I think it hit like 15 to 20K MRR. So it was like a small app studio at the time. Then I was also exposed, and not as a consultant, but like let's say as an employee at the time, to apps that were doing a lot of organic traffic. Let's say like Motivation app, which is like everyone knows Motivation, I would say, and they have been doing great. Then I've been working with apps that maybe they didn't have the budget, and I was the one recording the videos for the ads. So I was like, a fan anecdote was that in 2022 I recorded like a video and it became the most viral ad on Spain in 2022.
Wow.
And TikTok like called me saying, "Hey, this is the best ad for the past quarter," or something like that. And it was my face there. I was like, "Fuck." So I've been like trying to build apps, trying to expose myself to create the content for my own apps, work as an employee for multiple companies. Also, I've been doing advising not only companies building out, but also agencies. And with the agency, it's funny because you're exposed to even more customers because you advise the specific clients that they already have. Um, and then when I started with Appstack, I was like, if I can build something that the people that I know are willing to pay, I'm pretty sure a lot of more applications will actually need this. And initially, I made a lot of mistakes while building this. Like I focused on the wrong things, I would say. Like I'm going to be honest. Um, and in the past, I would say 6 months, more or less. Like we shifted completely to like answering the question that we have repeated multiple times, making sure more money hitting the bank account than what's going out, and everything changed. So that's what we are pursuing today. Like that's the obsession. Like how can we easily let you know that that's the case or not, for you to know if you should keep putting your money here or in other places. That's what we do for a living, and by being exposed to this objective, uh, a lot of people are really open to me. And I always joke with everyone that I think I'm the best consultant in the world today, because it's like I'm a consultant in some way that build the technology that these companies use to actually run their business. So it's like yeah, I know everything from the tool that they use, and I know how to advise them, and I know when they're fucking things up or not. So it's like I can consult them, but now I can also give them the tool that they will be using, and I'm the best one to actually advise them because I know how it works and what they should be doing or they should not be doing. And at the same time, people tell me what it's working, and I know if we need to improve something on our side or advise something different to other companies. Hey, why you don't consider this? Have you tested this in the past? So it's like a super consultant in some way, uh, building tech.
Yeah, great answer. We have a couple more questions I wanted to get to, and we will need to wrap up pretty soon. Um, but this was from earlier. So for IP fingerprinting, is iOS not sending the real IP or hiding it? What's the state? And I'm sure you've dug pretty deep into this. I'm still a little confused about like when Safari is obfuscating the IP if they're on iCloud Relay, if they're not, what things even just the normal Safari browser is obfuscating. Like what's the state of all this?
Okay, what I can say here is that we are not seeing like a big, like the IP being hidden that much, to be honest. Therefore, it's not affecting operations. Not for me personally speaking, but for any other company out there, I would say that it's relying on this identifier to actually do anything that they want. But the answer is that it doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah. And I think what's kind of going on, and maybe this is why Apple is more okay with it now, is that for these kinds of short term tracking, like iCloud, even if you are on private relay, is not like recycling your IP address like every 60 seconds or something. And so in the time it takes to like click on an ad, bounce to a tracking page or whatever, and then go to the app, the IP address isn't changing, but then maybe it rotates within like 30 minutes. And so then what it's preventing, and this is what ATT was really about, was that the IDFA would allow people to build up like very long histories of people, like every location they'd been in the last 5 years, because a weather app was sharing the IDFA and exact location data every 5 minutes for the last 5 years. They were tracking like the amount of tracking that companies were doing, and being able to build up this really detailed dossier on one individual person deterministically, like that's now what Apple is breaking with private relay and things like that. Is that, yeah, for like 5 minutes you can associate an IP address, but then that IP address gets recycled, so you can't use that to say, oh, this person who came a year ago, like you can't build up that kind of like dossier on people based on the IP the way you could with the IDFA. And so I think that's where the middle ground is kind of landing, and why the short-term tracking for probabilistic attribution is working, because Apple's not trying to prevent just being able to like attribute ad spend. Like they're not trying to prevent that. They're trying to prevent the kind of stuff that was happening, that was like incredibly privacy invasive pre-ATT.
I mean, it's how Android operates today. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like, yeah.
All right. Let's see. I'll check the chat one more time, but here's a question I'd already flagged. Is organic or paid the way to go in 2026? And what are the best marketing channels for both of them? Lucas and I were just talking about this before we came on air, because I have not really done paid ads in years, and never really done paid ads. And it's something I desperately want to get into, but I've relied more on organic, just like search traffic, Apple featuring, press. I recently did some UGC with a company called Noise that we did a live stream with. But I desperately want to get into paid ads. So advise me, Lucas. When should I start thinking about paid ads? How should I think about the transition? How should I think about continuing to like invest in organic while I figure out paid? Like, how do you advise people today to be thinking about paid ads?
So one thing that I'm trying to push during Q3 and Q4 is that there are a lot of solutions out there in the market that basically allows you to access like a pool of content creators where you can just submit like a brief, and then a lot of creators will send you videos. And then if you want, like one video, you can publish this video as an ad on Meta, okay? Just, this is how it works. And I was like, what? Let's say you're broke, and let's say you're just building your first app. How can you actually run on paid ads with no money to pay these creators, but actually give them the right incentive to submit the content for you? So one of the things that I'm trying to push forward is the fact that you can pay creators on future revenue from the subscription cycles. So one of the things that we are doing is that you can actually connect these tools, for example, to Appstack, and the links will be pushing back the postbacks with all the renewal cycles. In this case, postbacks may be coming from Revenue Cat, okay? And then the creator will know the exact return, the exact proceeds that this video generated. And this creator will get access to all the renewal cycles, and they will take like, let's say 25% of each month of these renewal cycles. So it's like passive income for these content creators. It's like going to a bank. It's like, hey, I don't have money today. Give me a loan. I will pay you the interest. Same for the content creator economy. Like, I want apps to advertise today, and if it makes money, you pay these guys later, and they will make money forever, okay? For these users that they are acquiring thanks on the content that they are producing. So that's one thing that I really like the idea. That's one thing. The other one, I already said this before, it's search. Like, search is great. People, like, I know companies spending like 600K a month only on search. I don't even know how they are doing this, but it's true. And then I would say, yeah, UGC or press is a good one. I really like that one. I didn't think about it. And then I wouldn't do like fully ASO. I wouldn't recommend that. I would prefer UGC and be over ASO. But I would say those are like the new things that I'm trying to like dig into these next months.
Yeah. And we're actually going to have a live stream. It's not scheduled yet because we're trying to get on somebody who's actually using the product. But I've been talking to one of those platforms you were talking about that does affiliate, and I'm super bullish on affiliate too. It's been super powerful in D2C for years. And just for whatever reason, and maybe tooling and the complications of it, and then we have a question about tracking that I'll get to. But I'm going to have the founder of that on, and then have one of his customers on to talk about how to do affiliate right. And so then I'll get to this question: is how can you exactly attribute a creator video to revenue amounts, though? And this is where, and I was just talking to the founder of this company a couple days ago in preparation to have him on the live stream. And there's several ways, but the link in bio and being able to link is exactly, Lucas's bread and butter, where you can like then hit a URL that like sets grabs the IP or whatever else it needs, and then sends them to the app, and then associates that. But then codes are also a great way. So offering like a 30-day free trial when you normally only offer 7, or offering a discount code or something like that, where the creator actually shouts out that code. The interesting thing about that is that if you're using codes with an affiliate, you can give them a much higher percentage of the revenue, because you're going to see a halo effect for this. Like, so I did this experiment with an influencer like 18 months ago, and I gave them a code to shout out. They shouted out the code, and then also provided them the link that attached to the code. And what I saw was like a lot of revenue came in from the code, but I also saw a halo around the week that was going on, where I saw more revenue that wasn't directly attributed to the code, because people were still just like downloading the app and checking it out, and either forgetting to use the code, or didn't see the code, or whatever like that. And so with that affiliate, I actually gave them 100% of revenue that was generated from that code, first time revenue. So I think at the time I only had an annual plan, although maybe a few signed up for monthly. And so I was like, 100% of the revenue that comes in from that code, I'll just give you, because I knew I would see this halo. And so it turned out pretty profitable for me. And they were actually really happy on their end, because it ended up being a good chunk of money for them. So so codes, link tracking, anything you want to add there, Lucas, on attributing affiliates?
For this, like Revenue Cat is not paying me to say this, but it will make things really simple if you use like a solution like Revenue Cat, just for the simple reason that what we do, for example, with a lot of apps is that if you want to actually like attribute to a specific creator, you will create you a link. Okay, you will give this link to a creator, or you can paste this link in an ad. It's the same, like I don't care, and then we just track down to that link.
Yeah.
So it's the same attribution model that runs on that link. And then since we are connected, you connected Appstack with Revenue Cat, then Revenue Cat sends back to us all the in-app events with the Appstack ID. We match, we track the revenue, we take the proceeds, and we'll let you know that for this specific link, this is the amount of purchases that Revenue Cat has sent to us, and the source is Revenue Cat. So it's pretty reliable, and it's of course it's not deterministic, but it could be pretty accurate. And for the creators, I would say it's more than enough.
Yeah, and I was just using Apple's offer codes. I think, is it offer? I get confused because they have like 5 different kind of promotional codes, offer codes, win back. I don't even know all the codes they have now. But I was actually just using the Apple codes, and then just had a little button on my paywall. And this is where maybe some of the kind of overflow happened. Is like maybe people didn't see that button in the paywall to enter the code. But then we also provide a link, because if you provide the link, it'll actually take them right to the App Store and offer them that offer right on the App Store. It's not a great experience, because ideally you'd really want them to like go through onboarding and get a little more kind of invested in everything before. So I would advise more doing if you're using Apple codes, like make the redeem code bigger on your paywall so that people use it. But then with those Apple codes, like that is 100% deterministic. I mean, there may be some threshold, but I don't think there's even a threshold, because it's like you can't really. Yeah, I mean, if you could identify 3 people who redeemed a single code like at scale that's not tracking. But I tracked all the revenue in Revenue Cat, because you can filter by code. Because Apple sends it to Revenue Cat, and then Revenue Cat, you can filter in the dashboard on the offer code, the exact offer code. And so kind of like Lucas was saying, I did it a different route instead of doing links, but it kind of works the same both ways, is that you can track those cohorts over time. And then the platform that I'm going to be talking to, the affiliate platform I'm talking to, actually has an integration with RevenueCat. And so we usually don't talk a ton about RevenueCat on the podcast or these live streams, but when you dig into all this attribution stuff, data does really matter, and being able to like interpret the data. Something I don't know if it's in beta yet or coming out soon, so maybe I shouldn't say, but it may already be out. I don't know. We're doing so much right now. I have a hard time keeping track. But we're actually creating or have created a dashboard where you can, exactly what Lucas was saying, like how much money is coming in and how much is going out. We're creating an ad spend dashboard inside RevenueCat where you can enter, or it even can pull in, I think, from your ad spend, where you're spending money on your ads, and then having that dashboard inside RevenueCat to be able to look at and follow those cohorts over time. I spent this much this day, and then how did that cohort perform over time? So it's important to get the tooling right. And and again, it's like I wanted to have Lucas on, not just to promote Appstack, although I do want to give you a minute to talk a little bit more about Appstack, but when you work on this tooling, like you were saying earlier, like you understand like what works and what doesn't, and like how to make it better and stuff like that. And so anyways, like when you dig into all of this, it's you do kind of have to start talking about tooling. And I think RevenueCat and Appstack, we're both trying really hard to make this easier for folks. So pitch over for me, but I did want to give you a minute as we wrap up, because we do need to wrap up. But you've kind of talked a little bit here and there about Appstack, but feel free to kind of give a little bit more of a pitch as we wrap up.
Yeah, I'm not going to bother anyone with a sales pitch here. Uh,
Okay.
I think we covered a lot during this
Yeah.
episode.
Well, what
Um,
does Appstack do though? What's the 30-second if I'm gonna run paid ads? Because I mean, like I haven't followed Appstack closely enough, and you've evolved and changed and added features and stuff enough that like I want to know like
okay,
if when I start running paid ads, like what does Appstack do that would help me more effectively do that?
so we are trying to do mainly, let's say, two things. The first thing is to build like a streamlined process for you to run ads for the first time, or like do the integration process. So everything it's focused to be super straightforward. So we reduce the integration process from like weeks to like 1 day. So it's pretty streamlined, and like people are like getting everything ready really fast, which that was one of the frictions that we've seen. So that's the first one, and the second one is just to build something that actually lets you know if you're making money or not. Because my job is not to give you creatives, it's not to run your business, it's to let you know if you should keep putting your capital here, or like invest in Bitcoin. I don't know. Like you should, like my job is to build something reliable enough that you can trust to actually decide if you should allocate your budget here or not. And that's what we do. And then everything will be like a nice feature on top. Like, of course, then we build like the trial qualify, the MCP, like multiple features that people ask. But the main core is just make sure that more money is hitting the bank account than what's going out through running paid ads in a really accurate and reliable way.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer. All right. Well, as we wrap up, don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. There's a link to the calendar that you can subscribe to. We do this every Thursday, but it's a different guest, different topic. So you can schedule that and set reminders and stuff with your calendar. Next week, Ethan Garr, we're going to be talking about building using AI and how to do it effectively. The week after that, we're going to have Yulia Lennox on. So her podcast is dropping on the main podcast and YouTube next Wednesday, the 22nd. And then on the 30th, we're going to have her on the live stream. So give that podcast a listen, take some notes, think of some questions to ask, and then come join us for the live stream where you can actually ask her questions. This is something I've been wanting to do. This is the first time we're going to do it, have a podcast release, and then have the guest on the week after. So excited about that one. I think it'll be really fun. I already recorded that podcast with her, and it was really good. Definitely worth the listen, and she's super sharp. Worked at big apps like Better Me, and Solid Starts was her most recent business. She's actually running that whole business. So that's going to be a really good one. So join us on the 30th and check out the podcast in the meantime when it drops on the 22nd. Thank you, Lucas, so much for joining. Thank you, everybody, for all the great questions. And anything else you wanted to say as we wrap, Lucas?
No, I hope I can be featured next year or in the future.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lucas. Bye.